I'm Ben Jack. Welcome to Advance One Thing, the show where I invite a guest to come on and tell me the one thing they wish they'd known when they first started sharing their faith. Don't forget, of course, we have a lot of these conversations and you are not going to want to miss out on any of them. So subscribe to the channel, give us a like, leave a comment below, stay in touch with us. And I think you're definitely going to want to leave some comments after this chat that we have with the amazing Danny Ray, all the way from the USA, illusionist, author, speaker, all-round genius. Danny, it's so great to have you on the show.
Hey, Ben, thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to it and thankful for this opportunity.
So, Danny, let's get straight into this today. What is the one thing in all your years of experience? And you're an illusionist, you travel around, you perform shows for people, you connect people through those shows, then all the way through to connection points to the gospel. I've seen your show, is incredible and particularly, I mean, amazing for anybody, but obviously super engaging for young people as well. And I love the way that you weave that through. Yet there must have been some stuff along the way that you've picked up where you thought, oh man, I wish I knew that when I first started out.
Yeah, so there's probably two different things because as a speaker, you end up sharing the gospel on a platform on stage, which is different than sharing it one-on-one. So to give you two different ideas of that, one, so I became a believer, a follower of Christ at 17 years old. And I started to go to discipleship classes and like, how do I share my faith? And I felt like I was very like aggressive, like, hey, let's jump into Romans Road. Hey, let me meet with anybody and you know, tell them the gospel. Like, you've got to get saved now. And that kind of, it was good. Like as a young man, I think I was honoring God that way. But I think as I grew in the faith, I realized, like, you know, we talked about this relationship that we have with God, but I had the absence of relationship with other people. And so just learning to hear their story and hear their heart and walk alongside of them in that journey. And then there's 1,000 opportunities to share your faith as they go through suffering or they go through a great time, or, you know, just different conversations would lead to faith conversations. And they knew that I loved them and cared about them, and they knew where I stood. So it was very different than kind of that aggressive approach. And so, and it's not that, you know, it was a bad way. It was just not out of the heart. It was kind of like, I have these points I need to get through, and it didn't matter who the person was. And so now as I share my faith, it becomes much more personal and much more like, hey, we're in this journey of life together. How can I come alongside you and show you this great God that loves you and cares for you and is there for you? Yeah.
So it sounds like for you, it's a motivation issue and a method issue all wrapped up in one, both the motivation of how I'm going to go about it, but also the method maybe being just a little bit intense and a little bit full on. How over the years has that shown itself to be changing in the way that you go about doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so I find that, you know, I'm always looking for like, what's a new way to be salt and light in the world? You know, how can we bring light to the darkness? How can we season our conversation full of grace, you know? And so I'm always, you know, looking for those opportunities, whether that's, you know, with a neighbor, like we have, you know, neighbors around us that we're sharing our faith with all the time. There's some Muslim neighbors that are next door, and they were both going through a really difficult time. And my wife and I felt like, you know, we should pray for them. And we asked them, hey, can we come over and pray with you? And they're like, we would really love that right now. And they know we're coming from a different faith background, but we just prayed God's blessing over them and we prayed for them. And so it wasn't this like immediate, like, hey, let's share our faith with you the moment we met them, but it's been these years where they trust us to pray over them when they're going through difficult times. We've invited them to things where I'm sharing the gospel, you know, in terms of a speaking platform. And so they've heard that, and we've shared that personally with them as well. And we've heard about their faith, and we've celebrated things with them that have overlap. And so it's been an interesting journey with them, but that's how we go about it today, which is very, very much relational.
Yeah, and you can see very obviously how that would play out in your personal evangelism, your personal witness, your friendships as you're seeking to share your
Yeah.
faith, and how you don't want to just become the guy that's known as, oh, I don't want to go for a coffee with Danny because he'll just slam the gospel down my throat, maybe soften me up with a magic trick first, and then bang, it's nonstop gospel all the way, right? So you
Yeah,
can see how
yeah,
that plays out personally. But what about like from the platform? Then,
yeah.
if there's anybody watching who has the opportunity to preach from a platform, is there also stuff that we can learn there where even the platform opportunity doesn't always have to be just this full on intense cramming down the throat? There are actually more nuanced ways to do it, even whilst making sure we're being absolutely faithful to communicating the truth of the gospel.
Yeah, so for the last 20 years, I've had the privilege of like traveling around the US. We've been to, London and 19 other countries, and it's been a crazy deal. One of the things early on that I noticed is, people that were doing like a comedy show, magic show, any type of like platform that wasn't just like a speaking platform that had some type of talent involved. It was like they would do their whole show with if it's a comedy show, it's like super funny and super engaging. And then at the end, it was like they
Mm,
broke character. And now it's like, now I want to tell you that I'm a person of faith and share the
right.
gospel. And to me, it felt like very jarring. Nothing against anybody who's doing that. But for me, what it came down to was Romans 11:29, where it says God's gifts and his calling are irrevocable. And when I read that verse in 2002, I'd read through Romans, but this was the first time I'm seeking out a platform like, God, is this going to be something that you call me to do, is to blend these two? And when I read that, I knew they needed to be inextricable from one another.
Wow.
This gift I have of sleight of hand, and then this calling to preach the word, those had to be inextricable. And so when I read that, I was like, okay, how can I blend those two? And so, and you've seen the show, where it's, there's a lot of fun, but I'm also engaging them in stories of the gospel
Mm,
throughout in
yeah.
a way that's subtle, that's not as in your face up front. And then, the deeper we get into the show, the more mess I make in the show. There's books on the stage, there's cards on the stage, there's numbers from a whiteboard on the stage, there's paper. It's just a complete disaster. And then I'm able to say, what if in the middle of your mess, God knows your story and we pray to get out, but God, what if God wants to meet you right in the middle of your mess and walk with you through it? And
Mm,
so that's like one of the images that I'm trying to leave with people, that I hope the person that's an atheist or agnostic or coming from a different faith could go like, oh, okay, I get that. And wait,
mm,
there's a God that loves me and would walk with me through that. And so it's a different approach for me of like trying to, whet their appetite and engage them in deeper conversations, both before, during, and after the show. That the platforms, what I would consider like 20% of the conversation, but it's definitely not the whole conversation.
mm,
And I want to create space in that for the gospel. So sometimes we'll share directly. This comes by invitation, is I'm there to serve. And so whoever's inviting us in, I ask them what's their desire, what's their hope, what's a win for them. So when I do public school events, I've heard that, some people go in and they'll share the gospel, and teachers just cringe because they're like, we'll never be able to invite somebody in again. And
mm.
it destroys like what we've been doing for years to build a platform to share the gospel day to day in these students'
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
And the outside speaker feels like they have their one opportunity, and they're not there to serve, they have their own agenda.
Yeah.
And so I'm always trying to figure out for the leadership, how can I best serve? And if it's, we want to direct, presentation of the gospel, then I try to figure out how can I interweave that throughout my show so it's building towards that. And we try to set them up for that even in the introduction, so
Mm.
that it's not a bait and switch. It's not like, oh, I thought I was seeing a magic show. So that's a little bit. I don't know if that helps clarify.
Yeah, it's perfect. And having seen the show, that's one of the things that I loved so much about it, was that it wasn't just like hey kids, let's have fun. Then all of a sudden, by the way, you're going to hell, you need Jesus. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? It's like,
Yeah,
and you do see a lot of that kind of stuff, but you were so authentic and sincere all the way through. Of course, we're going to have fun, but while we're having this fun, we're going to introduce all the concepts. We're going to tell the stories. We're going to bring everything back around to the circular idea of the mess that you've made and all the stuff that you were just talking about there. And it was really profound and really powerful, and building the cumulative case for faith and the cumulative case of the tenets of the gospel all the way through had a much more profound effect, I think, on the young people that I was stood around with than just here's 40 minutes of fun and 10 minutes of like heavy gospel stuff. There was so much more synergy, and it felt so much more. I would even go so far as to say it thoroughly biblical in its approach to evangelism, thoroughly Christ-like in terms of, telling stories that weren't a story to soften and then something on the end to make the point. No,
yeah.
the whole part of it, the whole story was part of the process, and so I love what you're talking about there, and I think that's super helpful for all of us listening. Danny, thanks so much for sharing that with us today. And like I say, if you want to hear more of these conversations, do make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you want to connect with Danny, the links are in the description below. And we will catch you next time on Advance One Thing.
Thanks for having me.